Good morning, 5th grade. Today we're going to start Esperanza, chapter 12. And before we get started reading, we want you to think about this quick write. It says, why do the field workers want to go on strike? Why are some field workers resistant to the strike? So think about what you've been reading in your close reading groups or articles about migrant workers or field workers, why they might want to go on strike. Also think about what Marta has told Esperanza about why she is trying to organize people to strike. Press pause to write down your answer in 3 to 4 sentences and play when you're ready for the focus question. Today we're going to look at the contrasting perspectives of the field workers about going on strike. So there are two groups of field workers and they have different or contrasting opinions or perspectives about going on strike. And then we want to know how and why did the two groups disagree. So what is it that they disagree about and why do they have these different opinions? Our vocabulary words for today are recuperate. That's when you recover from an illness. And that's our picture of this teddy bear who's recuperating from a broken leg. The next one is justice. That's fair treatment. And so this picture of these scales, like weighing right and wrong, that's an example of justice. And perseverance. That is when you keep trying and you don't give up even though things are difficult. Alright, we are going to use our CSPS strategy, and I'm just going to review part of chapter 11 and then we're going to get into chapter 12. So last night you read about how Esperanza went to visit Mama and she was finally able to talk to her, but the doctor said she couldn't come visit for a while so that Mama could, really get better. And so, she told Mama, don't worry, I'm taking care of everything, I'm paying the bills. And Mama said, I love you too, no matter what happens. And so this is, a pretty hard moment for Esperanza because it kind of lets us know even Mama is thinking that she might die. And so then Esperanza, when she was home, Hortensia was like, you need to get away from here, you need to get out of this house. So she sent her to the grocery store with Miguel. And, Esperanza, has these thoughts in her head about how she's, what if she loses Mama? She's lost everyone in her life. And so, anyways, when she and Miguel are at the market, let me see. They're at the market and they go to Mr. Yakota, and because he, treats people well. A lot of people in the town don't treat the Mexicans very well because they're probably racist, but Mr. Yokotoa treats everyone fairly. And so when they go inside, Esperanza, she gets her money order for Abuelita, to send Abuelita, but she also buys a piñata for Mama. She thought it would cheer Mama up. And then as they're driving back, they find Marta and they decide to give her a ride. Her and her mother, they give them a ride, and as they're giving them a ride, they say, like, we're going to down the road to the Strikers farm because they've been kicked out of all the other migrant camps. And so when they get to the camp where Marta and her mother live, Esperanza, notices how poor their living conditions are. You know, there were only 10 wooden toilets for 100 people, and you could smell the bathroom smell from the car. It was so bad. And people, they didn't have houses. They were living in tents, or old cars. There were mattresses on the ground. And Esperanza was she was in shock. She had never seen, poverty like this before. And so anyways, when they got out, this man runs up to them and he was like, "Do you have food so that I can feed my family? We were thrown out of the camp because I was striking and we haven't eaten in 2 days." And Esperanza hands him, she gets the hat from the man and she fills it with dried beans so that his family can eat. And Marta's like, "Oh, are you sure you're not on our side?" Because she was being sympathetic to the strikers. And she was just like, if people are hungry and I have food, like, I'll give them food, you know? And so as they are, they talk a little bit more about striking, and they talk about the people from Oklahoma coming who are working for even less. And Miguel is like, "Well, I might try to get a job on the railroad." And so, right before the last section of chapter 11, it says, Esperanza's mind wrestled with Miguel's words. For him, the strike was an opportunity to work at a job he loved and to make it in this country, but for her, it was a threat to her finances, Abuelita's arrival, and Mama's recuperation. All right, this is an important part that you should underline. Esperanza views the strike as a threat to her that's going to keep her from helping her family. She thought of Mom and Abuelita, and she knew that there was only one thing for her to do. And we know that thing for her to do is to keep working. She's not going to strike. She's going to keep working so she can take care of her family. Okay, and here we are in the last section of chapter 11. We're going to use our CSPS strategy. Esperanza studied her hands a few nights later when she walked toward the cabin and hoped Hortensia had a few more avocados. It was later than usual. She'd been weeding asparagus in a far field, so she had been on the last truck. When she arrived at the cabin, everyone was crowded around a small table. There were fresh tortillas on a plate, and Hortensia was stirring a pan of machaca, scrambled eggs with shredded meat, onions, and peppers. It was Miguel's favorite, but they usually ate it for breakfast. "What's the occasion?" said Esperanza. "I got a job in a machine shop at the railroad." "Oh, Miguel, what good news!" "So many railroad workers have joined the strikers. I know it might be temporary, but if I do a good job, maybe they will keep me." "That's right," said Alfonso. "You do good work. They will see it. They will keep you." Esperanza sat down and listened to Miguel tell the others about the job, but she wasn't hearing his words. She was seeing his eyes, dancing like Papa's when he used to talk about the land. She watched Miguel's animated face, thinking that at last his dream was coming true. And so we'll stop right here. We know that for our character, we could say Miguel got a job on the railroad because so many people were striking. Okay, and you can use this quote from the page. "I got a job in the machine shop at the railroad." All right, and the setting, we know that Esperanza is in the cabin, after work one night. Esperanza's in the cabin after work one night, and you can use this quote. All right, so we're going to keep reading in chapter 12, the first section. All right, top of chapter 12. Marta was right. The strikers were more organized than ever. They handed out flyers in front of every store. They painted the sides of old barns with their slogans and held big meetings at the farm. For those who continued to work, there were still jobs, but Esperanza could hear the tightness and worry in her neighbors' voices. She worried too about what would happen if she didn't have a job. Right? And so this is our problem. The farm workers are worried that because of the strikers, they might all lose their job. The field workers are worried that because of the strikers, they all might lose their job. Press pause to write down your answer for the problem, and you can choose this quote. Asparagus would be a long season, sometimes up to 10 weeks, but it had to be picked before the high temperatures touched the valley in June. The strikers knew that if they could slow down the workers, it would affect the growers. So when the tender stalks were ready, the strikers were ready too. Esperanza got on the flatbed with Hortensia and Josefina for the first day of packing. The company had sent a man with a gun to ride in the truck with them for protection, they said, but the gun frightened Esperanza. When they arrived at the sheds, a crowd of women erupted into shouting and booing. They carried signs that said, "Huelga, strike." Among them were Marta and her friends, and they were yelling, "Help us feed our children! We must all join together if we are all to eat. Save your countrymen from starving." When Esperanza saw their menacing faces, she wanted to run back to safety of the camp, do laundry, clean diapers, anything but this. She wanted to tell them that her mother was sick, that she had bills to pay. She wanted to explain to them about Abuelita and how she had to find a way to get some money so that she could travel. But maybe they'd understand why she needed her job. She wanted to tell them that she didn't want anyone's children to starve. But she knew it would not matter. The strikers only listened if you agreed with them. So Esperanza has this inner conflict. It's almost like she agrees with the strikers. She doesn't want anyone to starve. She wants everyone to have better pay. But she's not willing to strike because she has to provide for her family. Let's keep going. She reached for Hortensia's hand and pulled her close. Josefina marched toward the shed, looking straight ahead. Hortensia and Esperanza stayed close behind, never letting go of each other. One of the women from the camp called out, "We make less money packing asparagus than you do when you pick cotton. Leave us alone. Our children are hungry too." When the guard wasn't looking, one of the strikers picked up a rock and threw it at a woman, barely missing her head, and the workers all hurried toward the shed. The strikers stayed near the road, but Esperanza's heart was still beating wildly as she and the women took their places to pack the asparagus. All day, as she sorted and bundled the delicate spears, she heard their chanting and their threats. That night at dinner, Alfonso and Juan told them they had the same problems in the fields. Strikers waited for them, and they had to cross picket lines to get to work. Once in the fields, they were safe, protected by guards the company had sent. But the lugs of asparagus that were sent back to the sheds had to be taken across the picket lines, and the strikers often slipped surprises beneath the harvest. The strike continued for days. One afternoon, Hortensia took a handful of asparagus from a crate. A large rat jumped out at her. A few days later, Esperanza heard a terrible scream from a woman, and several writhing gopher snakes slithered out of the crate. They found razor blades and shards of glass in the field bins, and the women, usually efficient and quick to unpack the asparagus, slowed down and were hesitant to grab the vegetables in the box. When several of them heard a rattling behind a pile of stalks, the supervisors took the entire crate out into the yard, dumped it, and found an angry rattlesnake inside. Okay, so we'll stop right here. For the solution, we can talk about how the workers had to slow down because the strikers kept putting dangerous things in the crates. And you can choose a sentence from this paragraph. Then complete your